folks at home. So with that, I turn over to Mike to chair, but just be aware, we're also doing this meeting hybrid.
This is the Community Preservation Committee. I'd like to call the meeting to order. First thing on the agenda is the roll call of members of the committee that are present. Please respond when you hear your name. Andrea Wheatman. Jennifer Bluestein. Jennifer, not her. Okay. Jamie Gagnon.
Here.
Joe Texera.
Here.
Biff Faust.
Here.
Tom O'Brien.
Here.
Chuck Griffin.
Here.
Jane Healy.
Here.
Mike DeSeth. Present. Okay. Tonight's agenda is the primarily is the first of three meetings we're having to hear from applicants in this season's group of applications. And since we have a significant number being presented tonight and probably other nights as well, and since we have two that are being considered for an accelerated presentation and vote tonight, we're asking that the presenters be aware that you can assume that each committee member has read your application carefully and is aware of its salient facts. And we're asking that everyone with that in mind try to keep your presentation to 10 minutes. Then you will have questions from the committee. Any questions or comments from any member of the public that is here or tuned in. And then we will move on and hopefully be able to get the all of the applicants heard in a reasonable amount of time. I understand that there are many slides that are right here, ready to be presented. It'll show here, and they'll be shown on the Zoom as well. And I think if to the extent that they are slides that are also contained in your application, once again, you can consider them having been reviewed and examined by the committee in advance of this meeting. We appreciate everybody being here and everybody cooperating in our efforts to do this efficiently. And just as an overview to those that haven't presented before or had applications in the past, we will be making decisions, and the decisions at the end of our hearing all the applications, the decisions are to recommend or not recommend funding in some amount. Those applications that we hear and those recommendations go to City Council. We do not control the funds. The ultimate decision is at City Council, and they will have at least one public hearing in one of their committees on all of the applications that are recommended to them. So this is your first stop. City Council is the ultimate stop. Okay, any questions before we begin? Okay. Since we have the two applicants here for potential for an accelerated vote tonight, I believe it'd be more efficient, since that might take the discussion on those might take a significant amount of time, to move those to the end of section 3 of the agenda and hear from the other applicants in the normal course tonight in the order that they are on the agenda. So the first applicant we'll hear from tonight is Jordy Vining, City of Newburyport, regarding the Hale Street shared use pathway East Design Project, requesting $65,000 in the category of recreation.
Mr. Chair, just one comment or one thing. I'm a resident on Hale Street and this one does include past my house. So I don't know whether I should recuse myself or just make it noted.
I think, from my knowledge of the ethical rules, it's adequate to have noted. However, if you feel uncomfortable at all and would like to recuse yourself from the vote on this project, you're free to do that as well.
Okay.
Jordy?
All right, so try to be relatively quick here with the little slide here, show that Andy will be progressing. Hale Street Shared Use Pathway East Design Project. Next slide, Andy.
Sure, and by the way, just for everybody's sanity, the presenters anyway, you can just say next, and I know everybody's so courteous and when I go to these meetings and saying please.
Stop
Just,
saying.
you can just say next and just save you the time, so.
Yes, goddamn it. All right.
Also,
I'll be
please,
rude.
please keep in mind that we're broadcasting this, so you need to
Project
speak in your outside voice.
right over poor Tom's head.
Heard before.
Okay, so this project is intended to cover the design phase, survey, permitting, and final design in order to develop shovel-ready plans and specs for this shared use pathway, a safe off-road pedestrian and bicycle facility along the eastern section of the Hale Street corridor between the Squires Glen neighborhood and the existing sidewalk that extends to Low Street. Next. So there's just an aerial which shows the area in question. I'm guessing it's like 1,500 feet or something along those lines. Next. Most of Hale Street, I think everyone here is probably pretty familiar with Hale Street. Hale Street is a narrow road. It doesn't have sidewalks or bike lanes or shoulders for most of its length or any kind of accommodations for pedestrians and bicyclists. Vehicles is long and straight and doesn't matter what posted speed limit it is. Most vehicles have been clocked at traveling 40 miles per hour or higher. And so in general, the corridor is considered fairly unsafe and unwelcoming for pedestrians and certainly for younger bicyclists and families, as well as anyone with disabilities and so forth. But although it is lightly used by pedestrians and bicyclists and always has been. Next. I've been working here for coming on 25 years, and this was an issue 25 years ago when I first got here. And there's been several abortive attempts over the years to try to figure out how to address this. There's been surveys with school families and so forth. And there's been a fair number of periodic indications that people, particularly families with school-age children, would like to see a more convenient and safer way to have their kids be able to walk and bike independently to all the schools that are located in Low Street and so forth. Next. This is going to be sort of impossible to read, but this is a 2014 extract from some of the survey responses of various families over a decade ago, begging for a project like this. Next. This is a more recent so-called flash vote survey, which the city's done for several different projects. And the bars up at the top basically are just showing how a significant majority of people consider this corridor to be unsafe for walking and biking. Next. So we did a feasibility study basically in the last year and a half with the intention of trying to look at the entire Hale Street corridor from Turkey Hill Road down to Low Street in terms of what would be feasible for bike and pedestrian accommodations. one of the main things that that study did with the city council approved funding for that was a new and comprehensive wetland delineation along the entire corridor. And then we went to the Concom and had that wetland delineation approved via the so-called ANRAD, the abbreviated notice and resource area delineation, in anticipation of, potential permitting in the coming years. We did other things like talk with Mass DOT and meet with them, District 4 representatives, about making changes to the bridge that goes over the highway. The consultant did an alternative analysis and came up with this preferred plan of a conceptual design of an off-road pathway, an 8-foot wide, a fairly narrow shared use pathway, and did cost estimating, and we had a public meeting about it. Next. The focus on the eastern section has really grown out of that because due to the regulatory constraints, the wetland regulatory constraints, there are so many wetlands pressing in along different parts of that corridor that in order to avoid exceeding this particular threshold of disrupting 5,000 square feet, there would have to be 3 pretty long boardwalks to avoid that impact. And that is a big cost driver and was ending up with an overall project estimated at $4.3 million. We applied to the Mass Trails Grant Program for a design phase for that larger project, and unfortunately did not secure funding through that route. They did recommend, and we heard others recommend, city councilors as well as members of the public, to try to slim the project down. And there is certainly a possibility in the future that the whole corridor could be addressed, but if a standalone piece of this could be addressed, then that would be a more viable project. And the second that was referenced over and over was to have this more direct connection for the Squires Glen neighborhood area going east. So to connect those kids and those neighborhoods and those families with the sidewalk that takes you to Low Street and the new youth center and the playing fields and the schools and all the rest of it. Next. So an 8 to 10 foot paved trail, physically separated from the roadway and the traffic by a buffer strip or vertical barriers, about 1,600 feet long, handicapped accessible, universally accessible, and improving crosswalks is the basic scope for the project. Next. There's a conceptual plan that's in the 3 sides, just showing the pathway going along the northern side of the road. The southern side is where the utility poles are, which really are a significant physical constraint. Next, and keep going there. Design costs. So the VAI came up with this design budget, which is what the CPA request is based on, for $65,000 to go through all the standard approaches of engineering and permitting and survey. Next. The preliminary construction cost estimate, in terms of, we're not at that phase, the construction phase, but it's a little over $500,000, which feels like something a little bit more viable in terms of getting one's arms around. Next. Time frame. This is a little hard to read, but basically they're setting up a time frame whereby if the CPC approves and the city council approves, then the second half of this calendar year would be when this activity would happen. It's this section, everything like this has its challenges, but they're pretty confident they could move through this in a few months' time, basically. Next. That is the end of the presentation.
Thank you. Is there a plan, Jordy, that this shorter section could ultimately be integrated with add-ons to that project.
It certainly could.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a piece that if the city never does anything else on Hill Street, it's still a useful section in terms of better connecting that neighborhood in you know, an efficient point A to point B way. But if the community did decide we want to keep going west, you just continue right along from there.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Any other questions or comments from the committee?
Its appropriateness as a CPC project is what? How's it fit?
Recreation, just like the rail trail.
Yeah.
And recreational facility.
Yes.
Chair, what do the direct abutters think of this plan? Folks that like live right on Hale Street.
Most of the direct abutters are supportive. There was a couple of local people who were not supportive, who were down at the Turkey Hill end, who felt like we have a narrow sidewalk and we don't want anything changed to our mailboxes and our trees and so forth. In this area, as far as we know, is pretty broad support for improving access back and forth.
Any other questions, comments? Any questions or comments from members of the public? Okay, thank you, Jordan.
Okay.
Okay. Next, we'll hear from on the Woodman Park Improvement Project.
So I'm actually
Parks Commission.
planning to be here for the whole meeting. Do you want to tip the other two people ahead of me? Cause I feel like I have
Sure.
to. Talk.
Okay.
I don't mind staying. Sorry.
So we're gonna switch around these, so that the Parks Commission has graciously agreed to stand down for a moment.
So it's all the rest of them are mine.
They're all yours.
very Yeah. noble
of you.
Yeah.
Oh. Well. You wanna start that? Which one do you wanna pick?
No, I'm
Yeah.
saying, do you want to take the top two first? And I'm planning to stay here for the whole meeting,
Oh,
so
you want,
I'm happy for others to get in and out and I will.
so, it's okay with me?
It's fine with me.
Okay, then we're gonna shift gears and go up to the top two on the presentations. The first one being the Central Waterfront Boardwalk Rehabilitation Project by the Planning Office requesting $285,000. The category is recreation, and I believe that would be Jordy again.
Didn't we just hear? All right, again, a brief slideshow just to orient ourselves to this rehab project. Next slide. I think this goes without saying, but I do think it's always important to note that the boardwalk is central to the community, is very heavily used every year by thousands and thousands of people, visitors, boaters, residents. The boardwalk seems pretty central to our city's maritime identity. It's pretty critical to the downtown economy, the local tourist economy, the maritime economy. And the safety of using the boardwalk is pretty important to the community's quality of life. Next. The existing conditions. So the boardwalk was originally built in the late 1970s, a couple generations ago. And it was redecked and extended in 2002, a quarter century ago. One of my first projects, actually. Look how things come back around. And we did new lighting and seating and shore power and water services and so forth for the visiting boats. Over the past decade or so, in two phases, we did a lot of work to rehabilitate the bulkheads. And so the bulkheads that essentially support and protect the boardwalk facility are in excellent shape. And the stringers and the foundations that are underneath the decking also turn out to be in generally satisfactory shape. However, the tropical hardwood decking is it's in very condition, but generally overall poor condition. with a number of trip hazards and accessibility challenges, with some of these boards warping and flaking and rotting and deteriorating after a quarter century out there. This is just a cross section showing the whole system. So over on the right is where the river is, with the piles that the floats tie up to, and then in the darker gray, the concrete bulkhead. And then moving over to the left, you can see the existing timber boardwalk, the walking surface there, which is supported by timber stringers, which are in turn on these concrete sonotubes. And so that element, those elements underneath are in pretty good shape, where we pulled up boards and taken a look. And but it's the wearing surface on top that's in trouble. Next. Two pictures from the feasibility study that we've been working on of boards coming up and boards splintering. Next. Sorry. I had 2 or 3, pages of this, just showing different versions of this with gaps and splintering and so forth. So the feasibility study done by the marine engineers at GEI, they did a comprehensive and sort of systematic assessment of, which boards were in bad shape and which were not, looking at fasteners and the rest of the system. We got a marine contractor out there, BTT, to do some short-term immediate repairs. So they refastened, they put in a couple hundred new fasteners and refastened a bunch of loose boards. So they replaced some boards with temporary patches. GEI did an alternatives analysis, actually just got their draft final report this afternoon. I haven't had time to even look at it yet, but so we're in the process of starting to wrap up that feasibility study phase before we move on to the design phase. And they've given us recommendations for an approach weighing all the pros and cons of a partial reconstruction using new composite decking. Next. So this is sort of as an aside, the idea is that we'd be rebuilding, reconstructing, rehabilitating the boardwalk at its existing location, at its existing elevation. You can see those sort of color-coded lines over there on the right, and the highest astronomical tide, HAT. Those are projections to 2050 based on different scenarios. Intermediate sea level rise, intermediate high sea level rise. So this is basically demonstrating that over the course of the next generation, even though the boardwalk will occasionally be inundated in a big storm, as we've all seen in the past few years, in general, it'll continue to be below the actual tidal cycle. And depending on how much sea level rise we get, we'll have to see. The general thinking is that a generation from now, when the boardwalk needs to be rebuilt again, it should probably be raised. But the boardwalk is built to withstand occasional inundation, and it would be a much more expensive and complicated project given the Newmarket Landing Park connections to try to raise up all the stonework and everything else on those connections. So that's why we're keeping it at the existing level. Next. This is a color-coded rendition of GEI's recommendations on how to approach the partial reconstruction. So these 3 different colors, the green areas, the green at the base of the embayment, and then this other section kind of in the middle of the eastern. Those 2 sections of tropical hardwood are in actually quite good shape. Very little sign of any of this cracking and chipping and so forth. It's a little hard to know why. There's been speculation that when this material was delivered to us 25 years ago, it's coming in different batches from different places, and then it would go down by the contractor. And for whatever reason, these batches were better conditioned than some of the others. In order to save a considerable amount of money from demolishing and rebuilding those sections, DEI is recommending that we leave those two areas alone. There may be some little spot repairs and so forth, but essentially left alone. The yellow section connecting them, that is supposed to be where salvaged timbers, so as demolition is done along the length of the boardwalk, a number of the boards are actually in okay shape, but they may be an area where you have 3 good boards and then you have 2 bad boards, and then you have another 5 good boards and 6 bad boards, etc. So the boards can be salvaged, the fasteners taken out and reused. So the idea is that there should be enough material of our existing material, which is in decent shape, to fill in that yellow area. So so that would be reusing material we already have. The red areas on either end, those would be the stretches where we would be putting down the new composite decking. Next. Composite decking, we've looked at a bunch of different materials. We've had a committee which included Kim and Andy and others, the Waterfront Trust, the DPS, the Harbor Master. The composite materials have a long service life. They generally have considerable recycled content. They don't splinter, they don't rot, generally require minimal maintenance. The better ones have UV protection. Some of them have even better traction built in. And we actually have a local track record. The picture there on the left top shows the floats in the embayment. All those floats have composite decking. Those floats are probably coming up on 20 years old. And they've weathered very well in this environment. The other picture is from the Parker River National Wildlife Refuge with the very lengthy boardwalk that's been done in the Hellcat area. And they're very pleased with that material as well. Next. One of the things driving the project is that we applied in the fall and we just were recently given the good news, January 7th, that we've secured a state grant from the Massachusetts Seaport Economic Council of almost $1.5 million to support this project. $1,492,500 to be exact. It does require a 20% plus match, which is where the Waterfront Trust and the CPC comes in. Next. So in terms of financial budgetary information, the box essentially shows this breakdown between one column showing the Seaport Economic Council grant, what that 1.5 would be supporting in terms of the construction and the construction admin and the contingency and so forth. And then there's the match, the 20% plus match column in the middle there of the 410, with the totals over there on the side for this $1.9 million estimated project. So the match funding consists of 3 pieces. There's the existing $75,000 that the CPC and the City Council approved for this feasibility study. And we can, even though that's already been spent, we can use that as part of our match, which is good news. The Waterfront Trust has offered to contribute $50,000 towards this project. I was just in front of the Budget and Finance Committee last night, presenting that in terms of gift acceptance. And then the balance of the $285,000 is what this CPC request is in order to leverage the $1.5 million state grant and be able to do this project this year. Next. Time frame. So month of February, we're about to jump into February. The idea is that we would secure the design, final design and permitting funding and do a contract amendment with our consulting marine engineer. And then move into a 4-month design process, design permitting, plans, specs, final cost estimates. So that we'd be set up to bid the project out in the summertime, 2-month time period in June and July. And then have August to deal with contracting and bonds and insurance and all the rest of the requirements for public construction. So that we could give a notice to proceed in the early fall in September. And start getting our submittals from the contractor and have them order their materials in a relatively quick fashion within 30 days of their notice to proceed. So that we can then mobilize once the floats come out in mid-October and get in there for our off-season demolition, salvage, and construction work. It is pretty important to do this work off-season. You can imagine what kind of an impact taking the whole boardwalk out would have on the boating season, as well as the high season of tourists and residents enjoying the boardwalk in the summertime. So we think that all of this lays out because then you would have your punch list and finalization in May, right as the boating season is getting ready to get back going again in the high summer use. Next. And that is the presentation.
Questions or comments from the committee?
And again, if you don't mind just tagging on one more comment, the idea for the request of the accelerated timeframe, which you all voted on a couple weeks ago, as you'll remember, is so that we can stay on track for that timeframe that we looked out. And to be able to do this project and not delay it by a year and make sure we can leverage this grant.
You think the numbers you have in-house, the estimates are gonna hold until, the summer, the fall?
As prices go up, we've tried to build in some contingency into those. And so, yes, the short answer is yes, I am hopeful. I've talked with the consultant about that. There's always gonna be some wild cards, but we think it's a decent estimate.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from members of the public? Okay, thank you. We're gonna hear from the next accelerated applicant. This is Firehouse Center for Arts Elevator Replacement Project. It's brought to us by the Society for the Development of Arts and Humanities, requesting $200,000, and the category is historic preservation.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Valerie Raj. I'm one of the members of the board at the Firehouse Center for the Arts. I'm here with Sean McNazick and Bonnie Buckus. On the line is Nancy Caswell, who is our board treasurer. Shauna is the president of the board. Bonnie is the executive director of the Firehouse Center for the Arts. And thanks so much for considering our application and escalating it in the process. So we are a nonprofit community arts organization. We have been around since the 1970s. The theater itself hosts live performances, concerts, comedy, all that. We serve thousands of residents and visitors to the city of Newburyport every single year. We are located at Market Square in the center, right next to the boardwalk, actually. This is a city-owned building. It is not owned by us. We are a leasee. We have a 50-year lease, of which we have 35 years into that lease. So next, please. No, please, sorry, next.
No worries, I was just trying to save time.
This building has been around since 1823, so it's over 200 years old. It was a marketplace, it was the Lyceum back in the day. It was eventually a fire station for the city of Newburyport. And in 1991, it was rehabilitated to become the theater, 191-seat theater, on the second floor, and a restaurant on the first floor, inhabited by two people right now. And there are city designated public bathrooms in the basement of this building. So that's how the building lays out. Yes. So the firehouse is again used by people of all ages, both in the community and in surrounding communities and tourists, etc. People of all physical abilities, seniors, families, people that frequent the restaurant, and then people that use the restrooms. Yes. Okay, so we only have one elevator in the building. I'm sure that many of you have been to the firehouse, if not all of you. It is the only ADA compliant access that we have in the building. It gets you to the second floor theater, it gets you to the basement restrooms. There's no other way if you are mobility challenged to get there. It is also the primary freight elevator that is used by the theater, also used by the restaurant when it needs to. And there are hundreds of city visitors that actually use that elevator and patrons every year. So our problem is the elevator is over 30 years old. It has had several problems, including the electronics have failed. There's been some water infiltration in the building, both from the roof of the building, which we have remediated because that was causing some other issues that we had to address, as well as there's some water seepage below the basement level where the pit of the elevator is. For that, we are dealing with a remediation effort as part of this whole project to put a sump pump in there. And in December, as luck would have it, we failed at an elevator inspection. So there's a number of different issues that we're addressing here almost every single month. And even though we get maintenance every month, this elevator and have since its inception, this elevator fails. Somebody's stuck in it, it's not going to go down and whatever. So we're at a point where it just needs to. Yes. So what happens if we don't do anything? Well, we will lose our ADA accessibility to this building, which is city owned. Would have limited access to the restrooms. We would have reduced participation in our own performances in the theater, as well as having a threat to the restaurant. The restaurant does pay us rent for using their part of the firehouse building. And it's a significant revenue for us. So if that goes away, we're in some jeopardy. And obviously it's a threat to the use of this, wonderful building and what's in it. So what are we doing here? We're not touching anything in the footprint of the building. We are simply modernizing and replacing major components of the elevator. To improve the safety, update the electronics, make sure that, everything is up to code. Yes. And so we have, actually gone through, because of the urgency of this project, we've gone through vendor selection. We've chosen a vendor, which by the way, wasn't the incumbent, elevator maintenance, company that we had, because they were lower cost and their references were stellar. So we did a lot of due diligence in choosing a vendor for this. They've come out, they've done some analysis to see what was necessary, etc. We've got everything really ready to start this project. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So where we're at is, we've done some engineering and design analysis in the fall. Started looking at material procurement, and we are hoping to start construction and installation at the end of February. Now, we understand that this process is probably slower than when we need to start. And that's one of the things, that we've been asked us questions on, we'd like to discuss. I have put together, a payment schedule that shows us, and if we go into further slides, you'll see us front loading some of the payments for this if we can start early before we get approved. We definitely need the funding from CPC to get this project done, but we also really need to get started on it. So. All right, so what we're requesting from CPC is $200,000. That includes the money for the contingency, is approximately 15% of that is contingency money. We have a preservation restrictions that has been drafted and it's under review. And so that is in the works. We actually thought we had one already on file, but it turns out, because we have done the funds before, but it turns out that didn't exist in our going through the process.
Just to clarify for the record, that's largely a formality at this point, because they just, legal counsel just have to help with one piece of that, and we're gonna pick that up in the coming days, so. It's not that there's any sort of substantive issue, I think, and then that's already sort of wrapped up for, it's formality for that.
Thank you. So we have raised, funds, our own funds so far. We raised, about $60,000 from our annual gala, which was last fall. The Eric Hellion Foundation generously agreed to match up to $200,000. So we've got some funds that we can, of our own, that we've raised for this. All right, so this clearly we feel fits within the goals of the CPC. It's a historic city-owned structure. It ensures that we are, accessible to people with accessibility challenges. It supports the cultural and civic vitality of the city of Newburyport, and it extends the life of it. So, again, all the stuff here is really kind of a regurgitation of the last slide, so I'll let you skip over that one. We have gotten 20 letters from different members of the community, both in the artistic community and others. We also have endorsement by the city. We have a letter from Sherman Union endorsing this project. So we think that's most. And that's it. Is there any questions?
Couple clarifications and what I just want to confirm something that as you are a nonprofit entity, a private entity, not part of the city.
That's correct.
You do not expect any city related funds
No,
to venture, other than the application you presented here.
that's correct.
Okay.
We'll take them if the city wants to get it, right?
Understood. And are you aware of any provision in the lease that you have with the city that requires the city to contribute to capital improvements in the building?
No, we've kind of combed through the lease prior to this, just to make sure, because obviously we're, looking under every stone for money to support this, and there isn't anything there. We own the responsibility for this.
And do I understand that you have an option to extend the lease after the current term?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the committee?
I'll just make a comment that since we saw them from the historical commission, and there's letters on file of our board, I recommend funding this, even though we thought that even though the elevator itself isn't a character defining part of the historic building, but it's a preservation, keep the whole building in use.
Okay, thank you.
I guess just the mathematics, the plus, 400,000 plus. Well, you've raised 266, so you need 134 to get to the 400, correct?
We need 134 plus contingency money to get to the 400.
I guess I'm confused, fundraised to date, total 266,
Yeah,
and it costs 400.
it costs 400, but if you look at, I think there's another slide that shows. It's 400,000 for the project plus 15% contingency.
Oh,
Where,
that's not shown,
sorry about
so that'd be
that.
60,000.
Yeah.
And so the plus would be 66 is the difference, so I see, okay.
What does that $400,000 include? I saw that there was a contract for the elevator company for 336.
Mhm.
Do you have estimates for HVAC and electrical and fire suppression?
Those are all underneath, they're being subbed by that contractor, that master contract.
So, so it's 336 encompasses those as well. I thought in the application it said that it was other work to be done.
Well, there
So
may be some other work that needs to happen, like additional painting. I mean, there's some project management fees that we're anticipating as well, so.
So the contract is for 336.
Right.
So where is the 400,000 go?
So the 400,000 is including the project management work and additional subs that are not in the contract, like for painting and so forth.
It's not clear.
It's not.
No, it's, yeah, there was, I'm sorry, there was an additional $5,000 that came after we did all this. It's actually additional $6,000 for the issue related to the fact that we didn't pass, because there's a door in the machine room that hits a bulkhead. And we have to like completely rip that door out and replace it. So that's another $6,000 that wasn't in the initial contract as well.
Does the contract include the remediation of the water infiltration and?
For the basement, it does.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, I would have a follow-up, but I can't get onto the city's.
There's a problem with the city's website, it's something that.
Because that's what the application is.
We got a note from IT that it's
It was repaired, it was going, and now it's not going again.
just got into it. It took me a while, but it
It
did.
did, okay.
So I can pull it. I'm able to get in.
You are able to get it.
I couldn't for a minute.
Maybe,
Look at the application.
Yeah, I was going to, but I have some other questions. Does anyone have any other questions before I continue on?
Go ahead.
And maybe Beth, if you want to talk to this as well. Yeah, I've been looking at the CPA, and what's sort of allowed under historical preservation, and I understand this building is an historic resource to the city. I also understand that the theater is as well, and so my question does not reflect any bias against the theater, at all. But is the theater that historic resource, or is it just the building? Because this is providing, ADA access to a bathroom that's serving the theater. The restaurant certainly isn't historic, but it's in that building. So I'm just trying to.
The building is what.
The building.
Considered historic, yeah.
So how does the ADA elevator support the building?
Because it supports the entire building itself. It's a public restroom, in the historic building.
The
So if I may-
restrooms are open all day when the theater and restaurant right now feel like.
Right, but I just, is it supporting that historic resource, or is it supporting a theater and
if I
a
may,
restaurant?
so if I could, just what I understand, I guess, in terms of the connection between that and the historic preservation part is just, well, there's a combination of different sources of funds and costs and so forth. At the end of the day, having the elevator work essentially makes the other revenue sources and other operations of it for the facility work, which means that the overall building can be maintained generally. Obviously, there's an issue here with the specific, element. But I think generally speaking, the assumption there is that by having a viable use of the historic building, that helps to keep the historic building in good condition. So I think that might be part of that.
In our we're in the historic commission too, is more that the remediation for what was causing the damage to the elevators is really the important part, as far as like the building itself.
And
But
that's
that-
been completed.
I think that's part of this work.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
but the roof has been sealed up, I think you mentioned.
It has been, yeah, right.
Yes.
One analogy, if I could just jump in very quickly, is City Hall itself as an historic building.
Mhm.
So, a couple decades ago, we were getting CPC money for historic preservation to work on the repointing the historic brick and the brownstone replacement and so forth, and all those historic elements, but also to put in a handicapped accessible ramp in the front and make the building functional and up to code in the same way that an elevator is needed to have an historic building with a functional.
Right, thank you all, that's really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely demonstrates a public benefit. Right, which is one of the bullets. I think it enhances resources of historical significance. I agree with the petitioner.
Is there an expiration to the matching funds?
No, not that I'm aware of.
I don't think so, it's.
And have you started a campaign, a fundraising campaign specifically for the elevator?
Yeah, and if you look, if you have access, the electronic access to this presentation, that picture down the bottom, if you clicked on it, you'll see our on our website with our campaign to raise whatever additional funds we can.
Yeah, we launched the campaign for the elevator at our gala with the announcement that we had this 200,000 matching funds so that we could hopefully drive more. It's coming in. We had an annual appeal announcement or at the end of the year, which is direct mail and emails, and really pleased that it's coming in slow and steady. But
Any other questions from the committee? Any questions from the public? Questions or comments? Okay,
Sorry, I just noticed, thank you, Kim, I just noticed that Nancy Caswell's going to join us, I don't know if, Nancy, you may not be able to need to add anything at this point, since we, there's no presentation of it, but.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I was on Public Works and Safety
Nancy, would
call.
you like to add anything?
I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Multitasking.
Yeah. All right.
I mean, I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Thank you so much.
thank
Well,
you.
Okay, I think at this point, I'll remind people that at our last meeting, we heard the summary of why these two applications that we just heard required, there's time sensitive for purposes of getting the work done soon. Obviously, the elevator and the lack of ADA compliance at the firehouse and the construction, off-season construction needed to for the boardwalk. And to get that done within the off-season and completed by the next tour season. So at this point, what I'd like to do is take one at a time and have a deliberation on each one of these two for purposes of carrying out our vote from the last meeting to deliberate and decide on recommendations for each of these applicants and amounts and any conditions you want to impose. So we'll take the first one being the boardwalk. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we fund the Central Waterfront Boardwalk Rehab Project in the amount of $285,000 under the recreation category.
Second. Second, okay, discussion. Any discussion from any? Okay. And I think we'll need to do a roll call. Motion is to fund the boardwalk project in the amount of, recommend the funding of the boardwalk project in the amount of $285,000. This is roll call, Andrew Wheatman,
Yes.
Jamie Gagnon.
Yes.
Joe Texera,
Yes.
Biff Faust,
Yes.
Tom O'Brien,
Yes.
Chuck Griffin,
Yes.
Jane Healy,
Yes.
chair votes yes. Okay. Next, I'll entertain a motion with regard to the firehouse project.
So moved
And your motion is,
to approve the $200,000.
okay,
One second.
any discussion?
Question,
Yeah.
has the mayor given a list of what their preferences are at City Hall yet?
Not for the balance of the project.
We haven't gotten a formal list, but certainly in our discussions, this has been noted as an important priority project in the timing and the grant and so forth. This certainly recognizes, you know, a good cause for, I think, advancing this.
You would expect it to be part of the mayor's application,
Yeah,
There's a letter.
from what you've seen.
Right.
Every year we
Yeah.
get that letter.
Yeah, I think the question here was, is there a letter sort of speaking to every project, sort of, right, as opposed to like each one, you know, sort but, I think we've certainly discussed this project and the timeliness of it, and there's definitely, you know, support for moving us ahead.
Okay.
any other comments? Jane?
I am satisfied with historic preservation. I still, I'm concerned about. Overall, and this included the boardwalk as well as over, these two projects are over a quarter of what we have for available funding. And we have 18 or 19 projects still here from. The boardwalk I was comfortable supporting because, you know, it's just a citywide asset. Not that this isn't as well, but I think it's at a different scale. We've seen that project before. And it serves many aspects of the health of the city. For this one, you know, it's over 10% of available funding, and the ask is 200,000, as Chuck pointed out. There seems to be some perhaps not wiggle room, but you know, just differences in way we're looking at numbers. So I had you know, if it's $200,000 match funds, the 66,000, and if we provided the $200,000, that's $466,000, which is well above that 400 plus to my mind. You know, the differential between, you know, for what they came in, what has been asked of, you know, the budget of 400,000 minus the $200,000 match and the $66,000 that they have would be under 134,000. I would be more comfortable at that level. Just because of the other things I mentioned, that the total, I mean, the total ask for all the applications is 2.7, we have 1.7. And I just want to be fair to the other applications.
Sure.
I feel similar about that, and I think they're partway through the fundraising. I don't really have a problem with seeing them get some money, substantial money from us. I do question, like, the contingency we're funding it up front. I would rather be coming back later if we had money and work with them again if they were running over. It seems there's so much money going out the door here. These two items I haven't heard the rest yet. That's the only, I've got the very same hesitation you have. Not that it's zero, but the whole thing, including all the contingencies, seems a little odd when you're still raising it. That's all.
Any other discussion? Then the motion that we're voting on is to recommend funding for this project in the amount of $200,000. And we'll take a roll call.
Can I just say one thing? I'm so sorry.
Sure.
Is it possible to, I don't know if this messes up the motion, but to vote on awarding a portion now and table the rest until we have considered all of the applications, or are we voting on it in its entirety now?
Good question. My assumption was we're voting on it in its entirety in order to match, you know, provide matching funds and you know, leverage if they have. And I think the process would be if you wanted to have a discussion on a different amount or a segregation of funds, some now, some later. The appropriate way to do that would be to seek to amend the motion that's on the table. We vote on the amendment, then we vote on the motion. or we vote this straight up, and if it, if, for instance, it doesn't get a majority, then another motion would come on the table to, in a, whatever differences or whatever changes the mover wanted to make to, continue considering this application. Okay. Any others? Okay, then we'll have roll call. Andrea Wheatley,
Yes.
Jamie Gagnon.
Yes.
Joe Texera,
Yes.
Bish Faust,
No.
Tom O'Brien.
Yes.
Chuck Griffin,
No,
Jane Healy,
No,
chair votes yes. So that's three no's. And we have 10 present, 8 present. So
Right, because we're down one.
Hmm?
We're down one.
we're only down one, right? Okay, yeah, so that does pass. Okay. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
Cory?
I'm gonna go too. Thank you, everybody. On to the show, council. Thanks, Andrew, for reordering.
Yeah.
No, I didn't be talking that long.
We do.
Okay, thanks. Are you ready for me?
Yes. Next, we will hear from the Parks Commission. If you want me to go on in the order that it's on, it doesn't matter. You're teed up for all of them. All right, let's go right down the list. Woodland Park Improvement Project. Parks Commission is investing $75,000 in the category of recreation.
All right, thank you for your time tonight. This project is a request for allocation for the Woodman Park restoration, which you've seen me a couple of times, but just to give a very brief overview, this is about a 10 and a half acre parcel located at the eastern end of Crow Lane, donated by the family of John Woodman, who was a farmer. It's one of the few recreational assets in the West End, which makes it quite valuable recreationally. Next. So again, you've seen me here a few different times. We kind of broke this project into 3 phases. So in 2023, CPC gave $57,500 to improve accessibility at the park. So there was plastic edging around the existing playground. And there was a set of stairs, not a very accessible set of stairs to the playground itself. So phase 1 was to take out the plastic edging and the stairway and create this sort of handicap accessible ramp up into the playground. That work was done in-house, and so it came in well under budget. And then in the meantime, in 2024, we applied for just under $49,000 to, just under $100,000 to renovate the existing basketball court there. We were able to also create a multi-sport court in that playground, in that court. The 2 projects together both came in under budget. We returned just under $49,000 after we did a survey, which we came back to you and asked for permission to do for the front part of the park, with the assumption, which we discussed at that time, to eventually redesign and reconfigure the gravel parking lot in the front entry to the park to make it safer and more welcoming for visitors. Next. So that is why I am here before you tonight. We've done some concept sketches. This is not online, but I will scan it and upload it to the application. To reconfigure that parking, add a few additional spaces, including handicap accessible spaces, and provide a safe walkway to connect to that handicap accessible ramp to the playground. Also, we're intending to add some plantings to the front. Some of the trees there are quite old, and we've had to take a number of them out over the years. They're mostly pines. So the anticipated cost for that full portion of the project is $75,000. And I think that's it.
Is the parking gonna be all gravel? You can just-
Any other questions? Yes. Remind me, the 49,000 that was not needed from the earlier phase
Was returned.
was returned. That's right. So it's in our available funds now. Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Thank you. Moving along, the In Street and Patrick Tracy Square Restoration Project Parks Commission requesting $221,350. Category is recreation.
So this is another project you have seen before. Next. Again, just a quick recap. This is the epicenter of the urban renewal initiative that begins mid-70s. This is a picture of what In Street used to look like, and it was restored and is now kind of a central retail center and park space. It is the sort of urban parks that we experience downtown, which include Market Square, In Street, and Patrick Tracy Square. And they are now showing their age because they were installed in the 70s, and I don't believe they have been renovated since. So as you can see from these pictures, these are just some snapshots of what you can see today in that corridor of urban parks. In 2022, CPC supported an initiative to replace all of the lights, not the poles, but the lights along all three of these parks, and we converted the aging ballast to LED, which made them more efficient and had a better light quality for residents to improve accessibility. And then in 2025, you awarded us $56,250. I believe the request at that point was about $100,000, and we did a partial allocation to try to capture just one of the three areas that we were looking to renovate. Next slide. So just to jog your memory, we had the upper area here, we had Byron's Court, and then we had Patrick Tracy Square. Unfortunately, when we got the quotes back from the city's paving contractor, because this is brick and the cost of brick has escalated so dramatically over the last couple of years, all of the pricing came in higher than what we were given. Again, just to recap on the scope, it would be to reset and or replace those bricks and the granite steps, especially around Byron's Court, and then install larger tree grates to try to protect those existing honey locusts that everyone recalls when they're down at that area of the city. So I did break it out into the two different areas we're looking at. So the In Street, which is this Byron's Court area, is $150,000 was the quote that we got, and the Patrick Tracy Square area is $127,600. So the full request minus the $56,250 that was given in 2025 would be $221,350. I will pause here and say that if the commission did not want to do the entire project, there is obviously still that option to just do one or two, one or both of the areas. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Any questions on them?
So the breakout for the two on the estimate is $150 for In Street and $127,600 for Tracy. Okay. And the In Street scope would include Byron's
Court, not the upper section, but Byron's Court.
Okay. Okay. Any questions? Comments from the committee? Any questions or comments from? Do we have any public tuning in?
You don't have any public right now. So.
Okay, all right, then I will need to ask. Okay, thank you, Ben. To the next. We have Jason Sawyer fencing project.
Yes.
City of Newburyport, requesting $22,000, category of recreation.
So this one is actually recommended by the city as opposed to the park commission. This was a late request that came in through DCR. So Jason Sawyer Playground is the playground that's located at the end of Plum Island, adjacent to the public parking lot at the northern end. The land itself is actually owned by DCR, but the city owns or installed and owns the playground. DCR approached us over the summer with some concerns about the safety of the playground. We have a lot of dune grass that is encroaching, especially in this play structure here, and some of the components in the back. They're concerned about accessibility and there's some decking that's installed within the fall zones of some of the playground equipment. So we met out there over the summer. They identified the concerns. A lot of the concerns we can handle in-house with our parks manager. However, one of the outstanding concerns is that the fencing, I think if you go to the next slide, you can see it. The fencing right now only goes from the basketball court, which is here, across the face of a section of the parking lot. And all along here is open between the playground and the parking lot and the street. So they're concerned about safety of children who are playing there, kind of running into vehicular areas. The fencing is also in really poor shape. It's broken in a lot of areas. The gates don't work anymore. So DCR had made the requests that we could work together to hopefully apply to the CPC to try to get this one remaining component taken care of. It's 292 linear feet plus 2 gates. Again, we would replace the existing fence and then extend it around the corner here to wrap it to make it safer for children at the playground. Next slide. The total quote we received was for $19,078. We added a small contingency there to round it up to $22,000. We believe that would fully cover the scope of that work.
Would the excuse me, probably shut it off. Would the fence be on DCR land?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, yeah, that's a question for you. We're looking at the map there.
Yeah, so it would fall on DCR land, but as Kim mentioned, this is, sort of wasn't originally installed on the city side, and the expectation was that the city would take care of this element as opposed to DCR. Yeah. But it is on DCR property as well.
And it's,
There's an awkward configuration of lot lines there through the parking lot, and so, so.
but it's with the approval and at the direction of DCR that
Correct.
where the fence would be correct.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
So
Yes.
why wouldn't we just for playground? Why is it kind of way around the corner?
One of the components, you can't see it from here. There's a volleyball net here, but there's
Oh.
also a climbing structure.
Oh, okay.
So it's hard to see.
Right, okay. Yeah, I just felt it looked like we're just fencing in sand.
Yeah, no.
I noticed in the recommendation from the chair of the Parks Commission, the term he used was that this had fallen out of compliance with the state. Is there if this doesn't get funded to be fixed, what happens?
It's a bit murky. Yeah, but I think this is why DCR has approached us, asking for us to take care of these smaller, what in the grand scheme of things are smaller fixes to keep us in compliance. And I will say DCR does come out here and they have playground safety specialists who all are actually replacing bolts, tightening bolts. So they are providing us with some services as well. They've also offered to provide us with something akin to a Moby mat, so that when we take those boardwalk pieces out within the fall zones, they are planning to provide us with alternative accessible surface that we can lay down onto the sand to at least get the kids to the platforms that enter them into, not around the swings, but to get them into that structure itself. So we are working collaboratively with DCR. They are providing us with some services, but this is one thing that we felt we could ask from CPC to sort of meet them halfway, if that makes sense.
Any other comments? Jane?
What is the existing fence made out of?
It's vinyl.
And we're replacing in kind.
We're not replacing in kind, and in fact, I just did speak with DCR. Their preference is a coated chain link, which I don't love, but we think we can come up with some happy medium that would. On Plum Island, you must be more than 50% open, so the fencing has requirements from the Conservation Commission. But we think we can land upon a fence design that would make everyone happy.
Okay, 'cause
Yeah.
in the packet, it was vinyl, I think, the estimate was for vinyl.
It is for vinyl.
I was just
yeah.
concerned about how that wears with
Right.
maintenance and.
Right.
And all of that.
Right.
Okay,
The thinking being that the quote we got, we could change the style and still fall within that same budget.
thank you.
I recall that since we're talking about sand moving with water and the area floods and. But I think the people need to know there really is no other place that we can put this park. We can't relocate it someplace where our investment could be more permanent.
Well, this is also not necessarily an area that gets that, it's a little bit inland, so to speak, and it's not taking the brunt of any of that sort of, erosion or if that's the concern.
Yeah,
This is sort of interior, we
Yeah,
haven't really seen it,
over the dune.
okay,
so it's somewhat protected.
so this will last a bit.
Yeah, luckily it's not in some of those jeopardy zones that we have elsewhere that are out there over here. So,
Yeah, a long term, it will be vulnerable, but.
Yeah,
the
long
island will
term,
be
yeah,
vulnerable, so.
but not during the lifespan of the installation, I guess. Like what you're saying.
Awesome.
I just need that.
Any other questions? Okay. Okay, thank you. Let's move to the next, which would be Fuller Field Track Resurfacing Project. The Parks Commission seeking $240,500 in the category of recreation.
Okay, so this project was funded originally by the CPC about 10 years ago now. To create a new track facility located just down from the middle school on Low Street. It is the home to Newburyport's championship track teams, and it's also used by the greater community for recreation. Yeah, and it was 10 years ago, 2016, CPA approved an allocation to pretty much create what you see today. The track surface itself has a 10-year service life, so it has outlived its useful life. Next. The scope of this project is to clean, repair, and resurface the resilient track surface. And replace the two long triple jump takeoff boards, which are located sort of in this area here. And sand catchers, and also to clean out the existing drainage system. Next. This is an estimate that was provided by Huntress, who was the original contractor for, or designer for the original Fuller Field. So the request, which I did not add a contingency to because he had already done it, is $240,500.
Questions?
Sure.
So we've got a 10-year lifespan of the original installation. It doesn't fall apart in year 10. I mean,
No.
it's got a degrading going on.
Correct.
Okay, so it's usable and safe at the moment.
It's usable at the moment. There is some disagreement about how safe it is becoming from the installer and the truck.
In what?
That it's losing some of its cushion, so it's not as, not as beneficial for the runners.
I see.
Mhm.
Okay. Is there any other funding source in the mix, any kind of leverage?
Not for this one.
Okay. It would, if I were to say that a certain small aspect of this, roughly 40,000, which is the small items at the end,
Mhm.
plus the design and contingency.
Mhm.
If I were to call that in a maintenance category, would I be wrong?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Just to talk about the funding, it occurs to me that they did a Friends of Newburyport track,
They did.
that's no longer around, there's no
They're
funds
still
available.
around. I think they should have supplied you with a letter of
Support, but no funds.
but no funds.
What is the, has the contractor talked about like? And I know you need a crystal ball, but like what's the pace of deterioration past the 10 years?
I could probably get that information.
Meaning like if it gets pushed out another year, I'm just thinking of
Right,
how many,
right.
right,
This facility is used, I saw
it is.
a kid shoveling, 6 inches of snow off of the track in the third lane, so he could run around. So
What's wrong with snowshoes?
it's a community resource.
People there all the time.
Okay,
On another slide, it said resurface of the resilient track surface. So I have that maintenance capital improvement kind of distinction in my head. What does that mean, resurface the resilient track surface? Do you know?
Because.
I'm assuming it means the underlying structure is sound and it's
Yes.
literally like
Top surface.
the red
Top
surface.
surface.
Yeah.
Yes,
Is that what it
it's the cushion.
Okay, I haven't been running on it, so I didn't think.
If you don't take care of it, it'll be a lot more expensive in 5 years.
Right.
yeah, you get deterioration of the under.
Right.
I got you.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay. Next, we have the Lower Atkinson Multi-Sport Court Phase 3 Parks Commission seeking $85,000 in the category of recreation.
Can you go back to the first?
Oh, sorry, yeah.
So I sprinkled into this presentation some pictures of the work that has been done here, and I do think that you should take a victory lap because this has turned out really incredibly well, so.
Only if you're with us, Kim.
What's that?
Only if you're with us on that victory lap.
So this is a picture of the universally accessible playground that was installed a couple of years ago, which kind of spurred off the entire project. That was phase 1. Now go to the next slide, Andy. So just to jog our memory, this is a picture of what Lower Atkinson used to look like. If you remember, it's a heavily used park on Merrimack Street between Plummer and Moulton, home and Pioneer League and the Community Action School, which is at the corner of Plummer and Merrimack uses this park every day as part of their curriculum. There's 3 baseball diamonds, a basketball court, and a playground, and a snack shack. So before, if you recall, there was limited parking, 33 angled spaces that you had to pull out onto Merrimack Street. And then limited, plus or minus 22 spaces in the gravel lot behind. And then the playground was in horrible condition. But so this is the after, before the trees were planted. So since this picture, there are trees along the streetscape and then tree, arborvitae kind of buffering the court behind there. So this was broken out into 3 phases. Phase 1 was the playground, which we just saw a picture of. That was $525,000 from CPC. Phase 2 was this whole kind of safety project with the reconfiguration of the parking and then expanding the gravel parking out behind Founders Field. That total was $584, $730. It was split pretty much 50-50 between CPC and ARPA funding. We also improved the drainage. We installed a stormwater wetland, which I'm not sure the city actually has a functioning stormwater wetland elsewhere, and there's a picture of that coming up. And we have obviously vastly improved the parking and safety issues and accessibility. We have a completely accessible route to get you from these parking spaces all the way to the playground. So vast improvements. We also provided drop-offs and bike racks and shade throughout with a number of canopy trees. So phase 3 is our final phase of this master plan, and that is a request for $85,000 to renovate the court and make it multi-purpose. Next is a picture of the stormwater wetland. I highly recommend you out there in the summer and see the cardinal flower in bloom. So if you want to go to the next slide, actually. So you can't really see it, but there's a dotted line right here. This is the existing court is kind of in this zone here. Yes, there's a very faint dotted line. And the net is sort of in this area here. So the idea is we have this sort of emergency route that comes across here with a flush curve that you could get an emergency vehicle into the park should you ever need it. So the idea is to shift the basketball court out of that sort of emergency way into this grass area and have one basketball court and 3 pickleball courts. So it just sort of shifts everything a little bit to the west. Next slide. So the cost scope of this again is we would remove the existing hoops and court, and a little bit of the grass is needed, and we would grade and compact, and we would have an asphalt court with the full acrylic playing surface on top of it, again striped for basketball and 3 sets of pickleball lines. The quote for this came in at $125,000. We have $40,000 in from the Moral Foundation earmarked for this project. So the request to finish this project, the full master plan restoration project, would be $85,000 from the CPC.
Questions?
What's the condition of the court that's there now?
You can't play on it. It's all crap and heaving and it's in terrible condition.
I just had a question on the parking of you have any for the handicap up front? There used to be.
Yeah, if you want to go back, yeah, so there's 4 handicap spaces right here that are adjacent to a flush walkway. So you can exit the car right onto the sidewalk, and this route, the sidewalk here is completely accessible all the way through here to the playground and to these back areas where it's paved. Obviously, grass is not considered acceptable, but you know, someone could navigate their way through the whole park.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. And now the small one.
Yes, save the best for last.
Bartlett Mel Frog Pond Restoration Project. And the Parks Commission seeking $3,500,000 via a bond in the category of recreation.
So you have seen me present about this numerous times from both CPC and from almost every commission that is seated at the table here tonight. So I'm going to do my best to get through this information as quickly as possible. I'm going to start with an introduction and overview of the project. I'll go through some options that are available to the city on this project, and then I will talk about the budget and the financial impact specifically on the CPC, should you choose to approve this. So very briefly, we know that Bartlett Mall is the city's original town common. It looks much the same as it did back in the 1600s, 16 and 1700s. It was used for watering livestock. There was rope making there, and it was a training ground for the Revolutionary War militia. In 1800, it was transformed into a park, so no longer used for industry or for livestock. In 1805, the Superior Courthouse was built, and it's at that point that the sort of fresh water that ran across the surface into the pond got cut off when the Superior Courthouse was built. It became a stagnant water body back then. If you look at historic newspaper articles from this area, at one point they considered filling it in because the stench was so bad. In 1891, again, lots of newspaper articles about this. There was much to do about the fact that a wealthy resident of Newburyport donated a fountain to be installed in the center of the pond. It came by a train, and there was, much fanfare around it. It was a heron statue, which no longer exists, but the urns that you see there today are original. After many years, because the water, it did aerate the water for a little bit of time, but after some time, the water body just became so bad again that the fountain stopped working. In 1987, It was restored, and there's actually an artist in town, Jeffrey Briggs, who designed the new swan topper on that fountain. He also did the carousel in Boston, the Rose Kennedy Greenway. But within a couple of years, the city had to shut down the fountain again because the water quality was so poor. It was just discoloring the fountain and it was getting dumped up. So back in history again, in the early 1900s, the city hired renowned landscape architect Charles Elliott, who worked with Olmsted to provide some recommendations for the park. And he was very clear that the natural beauty of this park, which was created by a cattle hole, it was a cattle hole, should be meticulously sloped lawn areas, the water and the high branch trees, and that should be it. Simple, beautiful, pristine park. He was adamantly opposed to flowering plants or anything of the type. He did recommend getting the water circulating, obviously to try to, remedy some of the stagnant issues. He also recommended completing the northwest corner of the park, which if you recall a few years ago was just riprap and it was left that way from way back when. So we were able to do that a couple of years ago, which was fantastic. So the northwest corner now is complete. He also had recommended at that time, because there is so much seasonal variation with the water level, it was causing erosion of the perimeter walkways. So some sort of protective edge was something he had recommended as well. Next. So this picture, that is the color of the pond. It shows the algal blooms. This was an aerial photo taken from my map, and you can see what the problem is here. The water is stagnant, it's unhealthy, it contains high levels of cyanobacteria. Also, the sediments below the water have high nutrient loads, which just means there's a lot of phosphorus there, which is feeding the cyanobacteria, which is causing these recurrences of algal blooms. There's also toxic heavy metals in the sediment, which we're less concerned about because they don't really migrate as much, but they are there. And that's typical of New England soils where you had farming and industry from way back when. The walkways are in really tough shape, again, from that seasonal fluctuation around the perimeter. At some points of the season, you can't really pass in some areas. And even around some of these other walkways here, they're starting to show some signs of deterioration. So it's really just an unhealthy ecosystem. And again, as I said earlier, the fountain is not operable because the water is in such poor condition. Next. So what is the solution? So a few years ago, the city hired an engineering team consisting of, environmental engineers, water quality engineers, civil engineers, and they did a tremendous amount of testing here. They tested the sediment, they tested the depth of the sediment, they tested the water, they tested where potential groundwater might be that could feed the pond. There's sort of anecdotal evidence that there's a spring there. They were unable to find the spring. What they really were able to tell us is that the pond exists because of years of compacted peat that's acting as a vole that's holding that water in place. It's not being fed by groundwater. Groundwater is, 30 feet below the bottom of the pond. What you're seeing there is runoff from the courthouse, precipitation, that sort of a thing. Their proposed solution, we had looked at a bunch of different options, one being dredging, which would be cost prohibitive. And if you dredge too much and you hit that peat layer, then your water drains out and you no longer have a pond. So dredging is not really an option here. The solution we landed on is encapsulation. So we really need to encapsulate that toxic sediment that's feeding those algal blooms from the water column. That's a pretty intensive process. It sounds like an easy answer, but what that would require is dewatering the pond. You'd have to get all of that mucky water out of there. Drilling a bedrock well that would allow us to keep the water level at a consistent level. Installing a water quality system and a pump shed to house that water quality system to keep the water aerated and circulated. Installing a liner system to encapsulate again that toxic sediment. Installing native plantings to support or biomimicking an actual natural ecosystem here, so adding in some plantings for habitat is gonna be helpful towards the overall health of the pond. Restoring that fountain is part of this plan. Again, it's a historic landmark in the city, so restoring that is part of the plan. Installing a dock that would support a future boating recreation program there, which would hopefully spin off some funding to help, with the funding of keeping the maintenance of the park going. The dock also protects an intake pipe, which is very, like, they're getting in the weeds there, but there's two reasons for the dock. Installing the surrounding walkway, so again, repairing that perimeter walkway so you can go down there and enjoy the pond of the park at the water level. And then if costs and price allow, we would still like to install one section of straight granite edge immediately behind the courthouse that would protect the water's edge, but provide some seating, and we could inscribe the history of the park to kind of give people, a lot of people don't understand, this is our original town common, they don't understand the history of all the people that came here and all the people that, enjoyed this park for literally hundreds of years. Next. So we have full bid documents for this project. We also have 10 permits. We've had to go through DEP, Conservation Commission, Historic Commission, Planning Board, Local Conservation Commission, Mass Architectural Access Board. I mean, you name it, we have gotten approvals from so many different agencies on this. So we are ready to go to bid this out. Unfortunately, when we did this before, we came before you and asked for just shy of $3 million in bonding a couple of years ago, if you recall. When we went to bid, the numbers came in higher than we expected, and we had to release the bond and put the project on hold. I have spent that time compiling other grants and funding for this project, and we have close to $2 million in outside funding for this project right now, which I'll get into in a minute. Next. So why is this project important? It's interesting because over the last year or so, well, 6 months especially, I've been on the ad hoc committee for water infrastructure projects. And so I've attended probably 20 hours worth of meetings with the public about our water infrastructure and how critical it is and what sort of the pressures are, which I already knew, but it was nice to kind of have everyone in a room to talk about it. We talked a lot about cyanobacteria, we talked a lot about algal blooms in the lower and upper Otter Truck reservoirs. And through those conversations, I got to speak, and I still am speaking pretty regularly with the city's limnologist. And what I didn't realize until just recently, and I think there are very recent articles out about this that just came out during the summer, is that cyanobacteria is actually a neurotoxin and it is aerosolized. And so there is some concern that we should not be near areas where there are algal blooms because it's not good for our health. And that was something I always figured coming into contact with the cyanobacteria or the algae, like touching it was not great. And so why would you want to go into a water body that's pea soup green like that? But it's actually more dire than that because you really shouldn't even really be spending a lot of time near water bodies that are experiencing this. And also, Barlow Mill is our most historic park. Literally, it's our oldest park, and it is part of our cultural history. There have been gatherings here for hundreds of years that have helped build community in Newburyport. Next. We're at a critical moment right now, not the least of which is because of these increased algal blooms, but also because of the funding that we have at this moment. And because we know this is a complex project, it has a lot of, pieces that have to be carefully orchestrated, demands a unique solution. As I said, we have 10 approvals and almost $2 million in outside funding. This project will promote the health, safety, and welfare of residents while protecting this historic asset and our cultural heritage and enhancing opportunities for recreation and cultural tourism. This photograph is from, I think, the mid to late 70s, and this is what Bartlett Mill used to be. And I think we need to get back to this. Next slide. So I talked about in the beginning that the city has some options. So there are really three options for us right now. The first is that we can continue to do nothing, and let the pond be the way that it is. I can foresee in talking to our limnologist that within a few years, maybe it's 5 years, maybe it's 10 years, we'll have to prevent people from going down there. It's no longer going to be healthy to be near a water body that is continuously experiencing these algal blooms. We know there's increased pressures from climate change. We know these algal blooms because of heat and drought and increased cyanobacteria with phosphorus load, that these are going to continue to happen at a greater rate the more we experience climate change. Option 2 is that we could try to do some in-lake treatments, and I've been speaking with some outside consultants with our limnologists about this. If we did an in-lake treatment like an alum treatment or something like that, there is a potential that it could work. There is a potential that if we do that and aerate it without encapsulation or aerate it without encapsulation, it could cause an actual explosion of the algal blooms. So the other risk there is if we do an alum treatment and it clears out the water, it doesn't actually eliminate the cyanobacteria. And so if you have a park situation with clean water, people might feel encouraged to interact with that water, but the underlying issue of the cyanobacteria will still be there. So there is some concern. Our engineers are concerned about that, and what that might mean. We're still exploring that as an option, but they are definitely hesitantly saying that we'll look into that. The third option is the full design, which the con there is that it comes at a high cost. With option 2, I would say even if we don't do the encapsulation but try these in-lake treatments, we would still want to do all of the other things like repair the fountain, add the walkways, do the pump shed, and have the ability to house this the water quality system. So it wouldn't necessarily drop the cost down to nothing if we would still want to do those other things that are beneficial to the public. Next. So because we went to bid on this, we have what we believe are very solid numbers on this. I did add in a contingency, but you can see where all of the costs are coming in line item by line item. This chart shows the funding source, and on the next slide, I'll give you a total of that. But what we have for outside funding right now is the Moral Foundation funds, and we have $840,000 from the Moral Foundation. Over the last year, I have applied for the Land and Water Conservation Grant Fund, which is the same state fund that paid for the playground in the northwest corner. They have allocated $775,000 to us for this project. That the caveat to that is that this year that grant was earmarked towards improving water or giving people access to water recreation. So the boating program is part of the reason why they gave us those funds, as well as the planting. So you can see here, I broke down line item by line item what each of the costs of each of these pieces of the project are, and then where the funding source would come in. So for example, the Morals have designated the pump shed as one of the directives, as well as the bedrock well. So, and then part of the actual overall project. So those funding sources are coming from there. The Land and Water Conservation Fund, part of the lining system, but also the plantings, the dock, and the walkways, they were interested in funding. So you can see sort of where we have these gaps in funding, if you want to go to the next slide. So again, total amounts from outside funding, $775 from Land and Water State Grant, $841 from the Morals. We have a prior award from CPC for the fountain of $137,500. We have private donations of $7,000. And then the Newburyport Commission on Disabilities has pledged $5,000 for the walkways. So again, the gap rounded for CPA is 3.5 million. I want to talk about the impact this would mean for you if you were to choose to accept this. A debt service on 3.5 is roughly 325,000 per year. That would come off of the top of the allocations that you have, which is roughly around a little bit north of like 1.1, 1.2 every year. So that would reduce that allocation by about $325,000. That said, the high school stadium and the Cherry Hill soccer fields will be falling off in 2030. That would free up about $134,000 a year. I just want to note that if you choose to approve this and the council chooses to approve this year, the debt service wouldn't come until next year. So this will not impact any of the other projects we're reviewing for this cycle. The other thing I want to reiterate is I have literally exhausted every other funding option, and I really think I have looked at this project upside down and sideways and tried to figure out a way to make it come in less expensively. There are no other funding options for this project, and it aligns with 2 out of the 3 of the CPA categories, both recreation and open space and historic preservation. In my opinion, the CPA was created for projects like this. And so it's a way to improve a community space without impacting the operating budget and the taxes that, you know, we see and we hear so much until this is the only way to do it. I think that we can see my voice.
Questions and comments?
What's the chance of failure?
Good question. I have faith in our engineering team. They have looked and there's actually case studies of other projects, mostly in California, where this encapsulation model has been used with success. When I say they've done a lot of testing, not when I said the sediment, like they know the depth of the sediment, they know the composition of the sediment, but because we're working with GEI, who's ironically the same contractor that we're working with on the boardwalk project. They have structural and civil engineers on board as well. So they have tested the strength of those sediments. So they are confident that they are giving us solid information here, and they are providing us with those case studies of other areas where this I would say this has been used, but there's really no other place in the United States, at least, where you have quite this composition of challenges, where it is a historic park that's on the National Register with this sort of cyanobacteria problem. So, you know, the other encapsulation models or case studies that we've seen aren't in historic parks. They're more in kind of recreation, kind of open space areas. So I don't think you're going to find anything that is exactly like this.
With the grant, is there an expiry on?
So the Land and Water Conservation Grant, thank you for asking that. I meant to bring that up. The state grant, it does sunset. We have 2 years to spend all of the funds, with half of it being spent this fiscal year and half of it being spent the next. So I don't have the option of delaying this for a year without losing that state grant.
I would add that this has been the #1 objective of the Parks Commission for 8 years. And remains that.
In the historic discussion with the historical commission about the pump house, did
Yes.
that get all?
It
set
did,
up?
yes. We actually, Charlie and one of the members of the planning board actually worked together with the input from the historical commission. And I have to say the design of the pump ship they came up with is pretty amazing.
Good. Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I have one.
Yeah.
Going back to, I remember there was a lot of discussion on the impacts of the existing ecosystem. Personally, I think the existing ecosystem is very unhealthy, I would agree. But thinking of turtles escaping or whatever. So do you feel that the new, I think at that point, we're talking about possibly having granite go around
Yes.
the entire,
We're not
and this
doing
is just
something.
in front.
It
Do you feel like that will have, not that there was, should this be brought up again?
Mhm.
Do you think this current design will speak to that concern?
It did before, and one thing that I don't think people understood is we had a lot of conversations with the Conservation Commission, and we actually massaged the design quite a bit with those discussions. So, for example, we're putting in what's called hibernacula in the pond, so turtles hibernate, they go under the mud and they like to be all cozy. So we're creating two areas of what's called hibernacula, where we have two areas that are a little bit deeper so that they have a chance to burrow into that without the liner preventing that from happening. We're also, right now, we have invasive lilies in there, like we're bringing in all native material that is gonna support the habitat. So also turtles move, so when the pond is dewatered, they are going to relocate. We are going to be providing locations where they can hang out at the turtle hotel until this comes back to, till this project is completed. I will note that because the turtles are not a protected species, we cannot physically pick them up and bring them to another location and give them a new home. We are prohibited from doing that. We've spoken with our ecological consultants. And any fish that live in there are clearly not native because there was no way to put back in there without the human fish tank in there, so those fish probably shouldn't.
We won't worry about that.
We won't worry about that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Kim. That's all on for tonight. I have no other business. Do you have any other business? Okay. Discuss. Do we have minutes to approve?
No, actually, that's actually partly other than we don't come to the next meeting.
Oh, yeah, it doesn't matter.
Not urgent, that's sorry.
Sometimes you.
We usually try to get it, yeah, I know, yeah.
Okay, so we'll do the minutes when they come in next meeting. Any other business from anybody? Next meeting is next week, right? The next week.
February 5th, I know, it's Sunday.
Next meeting is February 5. So we'll be seeing each other shortly. Okay, thank you for your efficient questions. Getting us out before 9 o'clock. Okay. Motion to adjourn? And everybody's in favor.
Yeah.
Right.